This conference will
UDF
now
means
be recorded.
so UDF meaning user defined function. UDTF meaning user defined table function. Okay. So normally what happens, function means it returns a value, single value. It's called a scalar one. And then you can pass parameters, you can pass multiple parameters to it, but it gives you only one single result. That is called a function. Now that is the definition of function everywhere. Now Snowflake follows the same thing, and you can call a function. So there are two types of functions: system functions and custom functions. System means the ones which Snowflake has given you as min, max. So these are all the functions that are given with Snowflake. That is system functions. And if you want to write your own business logic and to have a function, or these functions have been written in the source, and you're trying to move them into Snowflake, then you have to write. Okay. The functions, and that is the UDF part of it.
You're not sharing your screen.
Oh, sorry. How about now? Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Cool. So, there are the functions. So that is what function is, and it's called UDF. And the next one is UDTF. So user defined table function. So we had already discussed this. I just want to repeat that, right? So when you have queried a data set and you want to use that particular data set again, how do we retrieve the data? I have issued a query and then I want to use the same result set and then filter some data. How can we do that?
Result scan function.
How do you write result scan function?
Select star from table of result scan.
The Y table of.
It's a table function.
Yeah, that's called table function. The same way, if you want to write your own table functions, you can write like that. So that is called user defined table function. So you remember table of result scan and then query ADR -1, -2, whatever you pass to get the read the results from a particular query that you have executed before. That particular thing you are using table of means table of always gives you a tabular result. That means columns and rows. And you can also write functions that gives you columns and rows. Okay. So lateral flatten the array gives you on columns and rows. So this is what. So we will see how to write that. Okay. And the UDFs can be written in SQL and JavaScript. Now it's in the beta version where you can write your code in Java as well. Okay. And they're coming up with Python as well slowly. So right now Java is there. It's in the beta version. It's not. So if you are familiar with Java, and then if you want to write instead of JavaScript, you can use Java as language. So whenever you're writing this, right, if you don't mention anything in the procedural code, then that is language SQL. You can mention language JavaScript and you can write JavaScript code. So whenever we are talking about JavaScript code means it is not pure JavaScript that we use for web development. This is mostly of JDBC part of it, connecting to database and then issuing the query and then reading the data and then control structures like if, else, loops, those kind of things that are part of JavaScript here. Okay. So that is true. So right now the UDFs can be written in JavaScript and SQL. Okay. This is about SQL UDF. So how do we write SQL UDF? So you pass a parameter, or if you don't pass a parameter, you write a SQL inside your SQL UDF, and the SQL should return only one single value, and that's about it. So you can pass multiple values to this function. You can use this SQL inside a SQL. So use this function inside a SQL. That means you can call select my function bracket and then column names from a table which takes those particular row. Each row value gets evaluated for the function, gets you the data. Are you able to follow me? Okay. And there's no recursive calling permitted. So recursive calling is something like when you cannot normally you can call the same function again. So for example, you have a how do I tell you business scenario? I'll tell you hypothetically. So you're passing a counter, that means 5, and it goes and then prints 5 first, and then subtracts 1 from the parameter that you have passed, and prints 4, and then subtracts again 1, prints 3, and subtracts again 1, 2, and then 1, and then 0. So you can just hypothetically you can call the same procedure which goes and then utilize the same code for running. That is called recursive. And in SQL procedures you cannot use recursive calling. SQL UDFs basically. And SQL UDFs you cannot use if else conditions. You cannot use control structures like loops, while loops, for loops, while loops, do loops. Those are all not allowed in SQL UDF. It's plain SQL that you write and then it returns a value. Okay. And then let's go and see some. Okay, so how do you write a SQL UDF? I do have so this is how you create or replace function, add 5, returns number, and you can say enter string. So this is a SQL UDF. If you use a language, let me show you one more example. Language JavaScript, then that becomes a JavaScript UDF. If you don't use this language keyword, then that becomes a SQL UDF. Okay. So what are we doing here? Yeah. Okay. So I'm writing a function, create or replace function, add 5, n number, returns number as, and then whatever the code that you are writing, you can write in quotes, n plus 5, and you can compile it. And how do you call this? Select and 5, part of a SQL. See, we got the value 15. Okay, so it just added with it. And here we can say instead of quotes, because we can use like this one. N F5. End is $. You begin your procedural code with $, so you don't need to give quotes. So if you use $, the advantage is, right, if you have quotes in your SQL statements or in your logic, then it doesn't mess up it. So if you want to have something like if you have a quotes here and you want to have a character inside which has the quotes, then that quotes and these quotes you have to close them properly. It's all mess. It's not clean. So they have given another way of writing notation $, and this. I can create this 50, and you can say here language. This is optional when you're writing SQL functions. Okay, if you mention, fine. If you don't mention, it's okay. The same thing happens. And how do you get to see the code of a function? What is the code that has been written? So select get DDL and then the name of the add file, and you have to pass the signature of the function. Signature of the function means here you have to say whether it's a number or int or something. You don't need to pass the parameter name because there is overloading of functions in everywhere. In Snowflake also, you can create the same add file function with a different parameter, or you can have multiple parameters. So each of them are independent based on the signature. That means the number of parameters that you are passing will define what kind of procedure function needs to be called. Okay, that is called overloading, and then you can send add file, and then I'm gonna do where is number procedure. Does not exist or authorized.
Shekhar, I think number is not required. We can just add 5, I think. Procedure add 5.
You mean to say you don't need to give this? No, it fails.
I tried actually last time that it was
You have
needed.
to, you have to give.
Oh,
No, no, even we don't need brackets, Shikhar sir. Just add 5 function name and function, that would be sufficient.
You mean to say add file and you don't give the number? That's what you mean to say?
Yes, yes, correct.
Like this?
Yes.
What if the function is
Are you
having
getting?
different signatures?
Yeah, you should pass the signature. You have to pass this.
Yes.
So I can write another function. Create a replace function add 5. I do have that. You have this. Copy this. I'm just here concatenating. Instead of addition, I'm using a concatenation. Yes, string, this is a number. And return string, yes. And I'm trying to create this function. And if you pass string, right? 10 stuff. 105. 10 and then 10 plus 5. It's concatenating and giving me 105. So if I want to see the code, right? Then go ahead and change it to string. Create a replace function. 5, yes, varchar. Returns varchar. Language equal s concat. Okay. Without this signature, it doesn't work for you. Try and let me know if it works. Probably I cannot. Yeah. So here n38,0 language. We did not write the language thing. It by default gets the language if it's equal as n plus 5. Are we good? So, and then I'm trying to create a function to get the total count of employees in employee table. Create replace function get emp count returns number select count of okay. Create a replace function name parentheses. This is important. This part of the syntax. If you're passing the parameter, you can use the parameter name here. Returns number $$ select count from emp and then select get emp count 41. Okay. So this is how you can create a function, SQL function. You can write complex SQL statements inside it, and whatever you're trying to get, make sure it returns only one single value. When you write select star from here, let's see what happens. So when you're trying to return more than one, right, it throws you, it's multiple values are being sent and you're telling only one number, it doesn't run. Or you can say EMP number. Let's say EMP number. Whenever you have written something, right, it happily executes, whether it's a function or use a different function or a procedure, it happily goes and executes it. But whenever you run that, that's where it fails. Single row support returns more than one. Understood? Okay. So, and you can create returns number like this. This is for addition, this is for concatenation. You can call like this, hello, to date, whatever it is. You just call. And then, so normally, how does this UDF help? So you don't need to have the privileges of querying the table. For example, we query the employee table, right? The employee table, you don't need to have the privileges. The owner has created a function on employee table, and then he has given the privilege to execute that particular function. That's called usage. Usage is the name of the privilege. Like select the table, usage is for the function. Grant usage on get emp count to somebody else, and then he can execute that. So, and the role or user using that role, they don't need to have the privileges on employee table. They can just have the privileges on the procedure. That should be good enough. Okay. So whenever you're trying to call the procedure, if the this function, if this function is part of a different database, different schema, then you have to call them as if you are calling a table. Different database dot schema dot the function name and pass the parameters. If there are any, then that should be fine. The invoker of the function need not have access to the object's reference in the function definition, but only needs the privilege to use the function. Okay. So we have use role data admin, escape table users, and total user count, returns number count star from users. Okay. And we given grant usage and this function to role unlist. We are logged in as data admin. Now we are granting it to unlist. The use role unlist. Guys, you are able to see my screen, right? It's tiny though. The use role, we change the unlist, and when we go and query the table users, it fails. You don't have the permission on the user. Select star from users. No, user does not exist. But you can say select total user count. It gives you the count. This is just an example that what I have talked about. Okay. And then next comes the JavaScript. So we have seen the SQL UDF where you can write your SQL statement and then call the functions. So you can use complex SQL statement, but you have to make sure that you have written only one single value. And these functions are also called scalar function, which returns only one particular value. Okay. And then, so there are other some examples that we can see. Okay, let me go and see the picture. So it is in the pi value. Here we are written float. You can return a number, you can return a string, you can return date and all this stuff. Yes, hold on a second, please. Yeah, sorry. So this is a static function. We call this, and then we are going to return 3.145. Create function pi UDF returns float as written. That's it. And then this example is a security function. Here, what we are trying to do, right? We are trying to calculate the profit. We are trying to create a table, number sold, wholesale price, retail price, and insert into purchases. And profit is wholesale minus retail. So retail price minus wholesale price. So number sold will give you the purchase total profit on that particular table. Select profit and then total. So whenever you are trying to return something to SQL statement, it has to return one single value. That is part of the function. Okay. And one more example where we are trying to calculate the diameter kind of thing. So create table circles, diameter, float, insert into circles 2, 4. Diameter to radius. Return float f by 2. $f. So, and you can call this particular because you are passing the column name, right? With radius, select diameter to radius, diameter from that particular table from circles. So you can pass the column name and gives you the data. Yes, are you able to follow me? Yes, no?
Yes, Shekhar, I got it. Actually, one thing I want to know. So you have written as a float in the starting, right? So like the two float converting from other string to two float, that function will not work, right? But that's why we have to use it as we have mentioned in the code here, like the value colon and the float like that, right? That's the way we can convert from any
Yeah, you
value
mean
to the
whenever
float
you're
value.
passing the parameter as float.
Okay.
You mean calling the, so let's do this example. This is what your question is, right? How do you pass float if it is a number or a string? Is that what your question is?
Starting.
This one?
Yes, this one. Yeah, that. Yes.
Yeah, because you are returning a type and your type conversion as a float.
Okay, but my doubt is like I have a, for example, I have a number value that I have to convert it to the
Hmm.
float. In that case, also I can use the same kind of logic like as you have written. Colon,
Conversion,
colon.
yeah, colon. Yes, yes, you can use this to casting. It's called type casting. You can cast it to any different type.
Okay, but the problem what I have seen, if I give the two only two and the float, then it should come as a 2.0, right? But it won't come in the Snowflake. But I don't know why it is like that. You just give it value two and convert it to the float, and it will be giving the two only. It should not give the 2.0, 3.0 or
Come again,
something. So
I
now,
did not use. See, when
okay,
I did not, I used number, and then when I return, whatever the number that I have written, it's giving me the number.
okay. But
So what
I
is your
want this
question
one
here?
to be converted to the float value, for example.
Float, then we have to write float here,
Correct. And
and then
after 3 point, don't give any decimal values. So don't give any decimal
one
values.
second.
Okay.
Hold on one second. I
Okay.
forgot the syntax. Yeah. You mean 3.4 and then take out all the values,
Yeah. Keep only three only.
right? No.
And now if we execute, we should get the output as 3.0, right? Because it is a float value.
It will become
We have to execute the function. It is coming 3,
yeah.
no? It should come as 3.0, right? That's what my question is.
No. So whenever you typecast, right, whatever the value that you are, so it can keep variables. That's what float means. If you don't have variables, it just returns whatever you have passed in. So float data type meaning it doesn't need to be 3.0. It can be 3 or 3.0 or 3 point n number of things. So if you say int, right, and then if you write this one, select PDF and 3. And instead of 3, if you say dot 000, what do you have here?
It is giving 3
So
values.
that is the characteristics of int, which goes and gives you, it takes out all the codes and then implicitly converted into an integer and gave it to you. But float, you have given a value of integer. And then if you want to see whatever, it can store 3 or it can show 3 point something. So that is up to you. How do you want to refer it? And each language has a different way of notations. Maybe, yeah, in some other languages, when you default say float, it might give you 3.0. But in Snowflake, that will not be the case. You have to look at the
Okay.
nuances of the language and then try to use it
Okay,
accordingly.
I got it. I got it. Like if there is any particular value other than 0 after normal value, for example, 3.123 is there. In that case,
Mm-hmm.
we'll take 1 to 3. But if there is only a 0 after the value, then it will be just giving the value because that 0 is not required. There is no meaning for
Yes,
it. So like
yes.
that. Okay, got it. Okay, thank
It can keep more values whatever you give. If you give only
you.
three,
Okay.
3 is also part of the float. It gives you 3. So in some of the languages, if you use somewhere else, right, it might give 3.0. But Snowflake, so each of them are different, right? That's how you have to
Correct,
use.
correct. Yeah, that's what I was having confusion. Now it is clear. Thank you.
And then, so here we have used this. And the same thing here, divided by 2, which gives us the radius. And you can use them part of the SQL statement, radius. Diameter part the diameter column and gives you the radius for it. Okay. So you can use join operations in your SQL. So we have created a table called orders and inventory, and in the inventory we have bicycle, install helmet, sound effects, so some data here with the price. Orders, how many has been done, and if you want to see stored profit for the entire thing, then you can write a complex code. Price minus I dot price. Okay. So order price minus something like how much you have sold for and how much your original price quantity for this particular, and then you can call this function, which gives the store profit. So you can use the function like this part of a column, or you can use it in your where condition as well. Okay, and you can use a parameter or a variable, and you can pass, you can use that variable inside this particular function as well. Okay. Let's see this example. So you can use a variable inside the function, but you should make sure the variable has a value when you are trying to use it. Okay, and counts are from this is EMP. It has unsupported because this is a 41. I am not able to divide it by 2. That is the problem. Assignment from non-constant source. So this somehow it's not. This is 41. 41 divided by 2, it's not able to do that, and it's not keeping this. It's not keeping the values whenever you're trying to assign it, right? I'm trying to see. Yeah, you can use like this. Make sure you select dollar ID ratio. So 21 divided by 2. So I have written a function, returns integer ID from table where ID greater than. So for example, if you have set instead of this one, right? Select min of EMP NO, comma, max of EMP NO from EMP. So I have 7369 8000. So I will give instead of all this stuff. And select EMP where EMP NO greater than ID threshold. So I'm just trying to see how many records are there greater than this particular thing, just to make sure that how can we use the variable. This variable is part of your session. Select my function. unknown intervals. $, and return okay. It should give me the value. It says my filter function is not available. Strange. There is no parameter, nothing at all. Why is this?
Sir, actually, we are returning table of in ID int we are doing, no? Table of ID
Oh,
int.
table of. Sorry. My mistake. My bad. Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Yeah, there are about 35 of them, and we got the data. So that is a table function that I have written. That is not the perfect example. My mistake. Okay. So this is an UDTF example. Forget about this. Okay. And then there are some more scenarios where whenever you're trying to use the function in a subquery, and then Snowflake doesn't support subqueries very much. Let me show you an example. This you might come get it handy when you're trying to. So now I have table called store ID city. I have table called employee, and which store they are working in, and then sales, whatever the sales that they have done. Okay, and sales date when they have done. Okay. Now I am inserting stores, Winnipeg, Toronto, and then the employees. So then one, and they are in Winnipeg, Toronto. Okay. So now when I write my query, the normal scenario in any of the databases where if you want to just get the city name, I can write like this: select city name from stores, where stores.store ID is equal to employee. This is the subquery that I can employ inside a SQL, so that using this particular store ID of employees, I am trying to get the city. Are you able to follow me, guys? Let me do this example. First thing, I'm trying to create a table. So already exists. Employees done. Insert into employees. Employees also done. So my query is right. Is one. See, unsupported subquery type cannot be evaluated. Where select it, you can pass like this. Let's see. If you pass a hard-coded value, it works for all Winnipeg. That is not the right thing that we are trying to get right. This city store ID is in Toronto. First one is Winnipeg, two is Toronto. We are trying to get that particular data here. So See, you can write this SQL using another thing called any value. That means it doesn't know how many. This is the function that you have to use for the city. Now it is getting. So for this particular store ID, it's trying to get, and then there is some problem with Snowflake, how it evaluates subqueries. So you can use this particular keyword called any value and then get the values. So without the any value, it cannot evaluate what, because when you say any value, go ahead and get me any value from subquery, but it goes and evaluates based on where condition that you have given. Without that any value, the subquery doesn't get evaluated. That is the stuff that you have to know. And I have been teaching this, but people tend to forget this any value. This any value normally works when you are writing your SQL statement, and it comes very handy. And there was a big issue, and then one of the developer, he tried in many places, and somebody referred my name. He called me, and then it was a huge query. It was about because they were trying to migrate from Oracle to Snowflake, and this kind of things is the common scenario in Oracle. You can write subqueries like this, and it's not working for them. And then you try to write a function, it's not working. They have done a lot of analysis and they couldn't do it, and they came to me. And then I just used this any value, and then he was able to query the entire thing. The query was about 3,000 lines query, and they had so many of these. So you have to use this to get your data. If I don't tell you a story, right, you don't remember the any value, and then you tend to ping me back. I'm telling you a story so that you will have some reference to remember that. Okay. So now, similar scenario, you can write a function as well. Okay. I have shown you any value in the SQL for writing subqueries, or you can write a function. Even if you write a function like this, right? Subquery like UDF, and then select city from stores, where source is equal to X, passing the X and passing it. So instead of this subquery, we have written a function passing the store ID here. This also doesn't work because any value is not, so it cannot get the values from that. So there is some restriction with Snowflake. Okay. And then if you pass a subquery, like if you pass a constant value, then it will work for you. Or if you pass store ID to this particular thing, let's see. Okay, we create the function, select subquery like UDF. Store underscore ID from, and the table name stores. Unsupported subquery cannot. But if you pass a hard coded value like 1, it gets it. Or you don't need to pass from code level, you can just pass 1. So there are some restrictions that you have to understand when you are working with subqueries. So this is how you can write it. So I have given you an example of city. And if you want to write it as part of the subquery itself, you can write the SQL in the subquery and write any value that should get evaluated. So normally what we say, whenever any value means we are passing only one single value so that evaluate and give me the result. That's what we are trying to tell. Okay. So this is pretty much about the SQL UDS part of it. And then we talked about, yes. And then what are secure UDFs? Secure UDFs are nothing but you are trying to use the keyword secure in front of the function or procedure or anything. So when you use secure, right, something similar to your views, right? When you create secure views, people cannot look at the, if you have given privileges to somebody else, they cannot look at the code. It's much more secure. You're hiding the whole thing. Okay. So for privacy reasons, you might not wish to expose the underlying tables or algorithm different details for the new view. Definitions only visible to the user, whomever has created the function. He is the owner of the guy, he can only look at the code. So security, because normally whenever you write code, your code, right, your algorithm, you want to hide what is being happening and all this stuff, you write security. And you can make a secure view as non-secure view or non-secure view as secure view using alter function. Alter function name secure. Alter function name non-secure. And if you go and describe the function, right, is secure. There is a column in the function, it tells you that it is secure or not. So functions, it gives me all the functions, internal and external. And I will say like is the one, and then if you see, right, so aggregate is a table function valid for structure is secure. So this is a column that tells you whether it's a secure or non-secure. Okay. And then, so how do we write a JavaScript function? So JavaScript function we write the same way, but we say language JavaScript $, and then whatever you want to write the code, you can write the code in. But it should, most of them is basically of JavaScript kind of thing. Okay. So the code starts with $, ends with $. Data types, integers and doubles. All numbers are integers or double in JavaScript. That means you cannot use number. They're all double or float. Double means which can have decimal point. That is called double. All numbers are integers or double. That means if you write int or double or number, they're all doubles. You can use float as well. Float is also similar to double. Okay. And you can use strings, binary values, dates. You can pass variants, objects, and arrays. You can do all kinds of stuff. Okay. So whenever you're trying to write a JavaScript, right, the parameter that you're passing, so you can pass like m double, but when you want to refer this parameter, it has to be capitalized, capital N plus 5. Okay. It cannot understand small n. You have to capitalize, and then it shows you small. If you write like this n plus 5, then only it can understand that. Okay. Or the other cases, you can write double quotes n, and you can define the small n here. Okay. I'm going to create this one. Add 5, return 5. We don't need to have this. Okay. Select add 5. Now this is double. We already have a function called with number and string, and we are able to get because this is a double. Okay. I can use this $. Okay. And if I use small n, right? Function happily gets created. Oh, it should not be the case. It should fail. Because it's now working as the other add file that we have. Yes. Uncaught reference action. It doesn't understand what this one is. Or now if you put it double quotes and add for JS, it gives it okay. Okay. Or you have to use capital. Make sure you might forgot this whenever you are writing JavaScript functions. Make sure the parameters are capitalized, then only you will be able to read the value. If not, it will give you throw you null. Okay. Troubleshooting becomes much more difficult. And then there is a difference between the SQL null value and JSON variant null value. So the JavaScript null is different. The JavaScript null is undefined. And if the value is undefined, then whenever there is no value undefined that comes out, and you see empty string. So JavaScript null values are undefined. SQL null argument to JavaScript UDF is translated to undefined. So whenever you are trying to pass something, because we are trying to interact between SQL engine and then the JavaScript engine here, right? So how does, whenever you parse the JavaScript, it has to be parsed according to the JavaScript engine. And when you convert, that is a SQL, because you have written a SQL on top of this. For example, you have a JavaScript function, you can call them in a SQL. And if it is returning null, that means it returns in JavaScript as undefined, that get automatically converted as null when you see the results. And if you are passing a null, if it becomes a null, right? That means, for example, if you are trying to pass the commission of a particular employee, and if they are salespeople, then only they will have commissions, if not null. And whenever you are trying to pass that particular column name, you are passing nulls as well as values. And the SQL null, when it goes to JavaScript, that becomes undefined. And if you have to validate it, you have to use undefined. Are you able to follow me? Yes, no.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, we are following.
Okay. So in your code, that becomes a SQL function. No, that's not. forgot the syntax for if condition. So these are all nulls and we are passing the value and we are trying to compare undefined and return 0. So the value that comes from SQL is null and this null, whatever you are getting it right, that should be as undefined. So maybe the spelling is wrong or convention is null, expected identified. No, I used it, I forgot this side. Undefined. The moment it comes to value, right? The value is null here. And it comes to null if you want to handle the values null, right? Then you can use undefined and then I have done that before, but I'm not sure why it's throwing undefined. There is some way that you can. Yeah, sorry. The comparison operator was not good. And it's giving null for all of them. It should not be the case, right? Something is happening. Let me figure it out. I'll work on it and then get back to you. There is a way that you can handle the nulls here by using this undefined keyword and then convert them. So that becomes, we can handle the nulls. How does the JavaScript handle it? I'll get back to you in the evening. I'll just check on it. Okay. And then, so JavaScript errors are written as SQL errors. If something goes wrong in the JavaScript, right, it just throws out the error whenever you are executing that. Uncaught exception runtime errors are there whenever you are not handling the try catch. There is a method. If you're not handling the exception, it will throw you an error. So there are some limitations where the UDFs will fail if it consumes too much memory or if it's running for a very long time. So they did not mention what is the time limit, but if it runs, I think more than half an hour or something, it's consuming too much memory and then kills, because there is a Java engine inside my understanding, I don't know, I'm not be wrong. Whenever you are trying to use this particular thing, that they might have the Java engine inside where they are passing this particular code to them and then getting converted. So when you're trying to run too much, right, the memory of the Java engine might be limited in Snowflake. So that is the reason it doesn't take too much of memory. Fail if they consume too much of memory. JavaScript videos that take too long to complete will be killed and error returned to the user. Too long means there is no definition of too long. Maybe more than half an hour. I never tried this. Stack depth. Excessive stack depth due to recursion will result. So you can call the same function in if it is a JavaScript function. And then you can go up to a depth of 5. That means first iteration. So you can call the same function 5 times. I have an example in the procedural part, will show you. You can call it 5 times and then after the 6th time it fails. It throws you an error. So this is what the depth is. A global state. So that means if you have a global variable and you are calling between each record and it has to read the global variable, right? It preserves the state. That's what it means. Or the other way that you can understand it, right? Each session, for example, you can call a user function and then you're using it in SQL part of it. And then it goes, if you're trying to assign a variable and do some calculations on it, right? Each query is treated as separate function. The memory is separate treated. That means these, it assigns into a variable, it does the calculation, returns the data. So each query that you are executing, each row that you are executing using this JavaScript function is independent of the other. Okay. And it says the relevant code is evaluated only once. Recommended pattern is to guarantee that. That means once you have compiled the function and you are using it, it doesn't need to evaluate. It just executes the whole thing. So this is something that you don't need to worry about much. Okay. And then what is the table function? Table function is like you are trying to create table of. See if you look at it, table of. In your return statement, you are telling table of and then path values. That means you are trying to say what are all the columns that you are trying to return back in a tabular column. And whenever you are trying to query, you have to use table of keyword as well. Even in the function, you can use table. So, for example, if you write this function, right, table of message $2 $select hello union $word. So these are SQL UDTF. That means in UDTF also there are two types. One is SQL based UDTF and JavaScript based UDTF. JavaScript based UDTF is a little complex. We'll look at it, but this is SQL based UDTF. Okay. So let me go ahead and run this for you. Create a replace function. T returns table of message and then select star from table of T. This is how you can do it. Hello world. So this in columns. And what is the name of the column here? Yes, what is the name of the column? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
So what is the name of the column that you see here?
MSG.
Yeah, message. MSG, right? Message. That means whatever you give in this table of, that becomes the name of the column whenever you query it. Okay. And I'll say the G2 varchar. Okay, and then I'll say comma world union comma hello. I'll create it. Add to hello message to whatever the column name that you are, so that is mandatory. How do you want the result set to be, and what are the column names of the result set that you want? What are the names of the columns? You have to mention that as part of table. And whenever you're trying to query the table function, you have to write table of. Okay. Return table is the script, the template of create a replace function, arguments, returns table, and okay. Expected from search from maybe oops. I've created a function department number, passing the department number, employee number, e-name, and then I'm going to call this function t, table of t, and then 10. See, now I'm getting a result, employee number, e-name, for the department number that I have passed. If I pass 20, how many number of record doesn't matter, it gives me a table function. Understood? This is what a table function is. And we have some control structures that are given for the people who doesn't have the programming background. How does we write if, do, while, and all this stuff? Just an example. Okay. In JavaScript functions only, you can use the control structure if, while, loop, and all this stuff. That is not part in C-based functions. Then you cannot write the if conditions, while loop cannot be done there. So language JavaScript, if n1 is greater than n2, return n1, else n2. Okay. And then switch statement. If you want to switch an expression, right? You can switch it. Here is the function. Create or replace. Is the procedure, sorry. You can write a function as well. So switch new date got get date. So this is a new date in JavaScript gives you the date of that particular with timestamp. So there are some functions that are part of JavaScript. So JavaScript has its own functions, right? So whenever you want to, you can Google it. What is the function that can used in JavaScript? You will get to know. So there are like a date, especially when you're trying to work with dates. It's very tricky with JavaScript. You have to be, you have to use conversions and all the stuff. You can Google it. You'll get tons of them. Just say dates or whatever the use case that you are working on. That will help you out. Okay, and then let's say get day, whatever today's date, right? Based on this, that gives you 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Today is Saturday, right? And then 6 return Saturday. It gives you like Saturday. Okay. So even when you're trying to drop the functions, right, you have to pass the signature here. There is nothing, I just use only open and close parentheses, but if you have a number or string or multiple parameters, right, you have to give the data types to pass that. The way that we have given the, for getting the, for viewing the code of that particular thing, right? Similarly, you have to pass the parameter. Proc switch test. Okay. Today is Friday. How come it's Friday for me? There's any clue?
I think maybe based on the time zone.
Yeah.
Snowflake shows
So my time zone is EST time zone, so that is the reason I'm getting this. Okay. And then coming back, right? So let's see. These are the control structures for how do you use while loop. While I less than 10, total, you're trying to create a variable called total. I is equal to 0, I less than 10, and then you're just trying to run return total. It gives you the total of that particular thing. Some of the examples. This is do, and whenever using the do loop, you use the while condition to exit that particular loop. Do is continuous loop, and with when this particular condition is met, it exits out of that particular loop. Okay. And then this is the for loop. So this is how we have to, for I is equal to 0, I less than 10, I plus plus, increment that and do that. So these are some of the ways that you can write your for loops or do loops in the while loops in your JavaScript code. So this is the same do loop I repeated this. So this is pretty much about this one, and we have this is so writing a JavaScript, the SQL based user defined function, user defined table function is much more easy. You just mention the table of and the column names that you are spitting out, and write a join condition or select the columns that you want to fit, and then that should be good for you. Okay. So there are JavaScript based UDTFs. When you're writing JavaScript, then if it has to come out as a tabular, right, then it is a little tricky. Let's go and look at it. Okay. JavaScript UDTF. I'll send you all this stuff. Whenever you are trying to this thing, you have to by heart, or you have to get it the code, get copy paste unless until you become familiar. If you have a lot of work in the development environment, see, for me, I've learned all this. I've written some of them. I learned from some other blogs. I got you all the data so that the scenarios that I'm talking here mostly match to your working scenarios, or whenever somebody asks you in the interview, you can answer that. But if you want to master this, right, then you have to have your fingers on the keyboard, start writing it. Unless until you do this exercise, you cannot master it. At least for the interview purposes, you just learn what it is, and I've given you most of the scenarios here, and then you can talk to them in the interview. But when it comes to working in the working environment, right, that's where you will have tough time. You have to do this exercise. And then I was an architect, I didn't have, I'm not a developer, right? So I'll tell what to do, what are the functionalities that can be utilized, and if they run into any challenges, I sit with them and then try to work out with them. But I did not put my fingers on the keyboard writing all this stuff. And then I got a chance recently where one of the person, they were trying to convert all their code into JavaScript. So there is a tool called Blade Bridge, and then this Blade Bridge tool, right? If you have Oracle or SQL Server or Teradata, if there is any programming language written, right, it automatically converts into JavaScript procedures, and that is not 100% correct. It tries to create it. It gives you some 60% of the code. They say 100% will be working, but it doesn't work. And they had about thousands of procedures that have been, and I was helping them out, so I was able to know more detail on how this thing can be worked out. And we still see some performance issues when you are trying to run huge data sets on this particular UDFs or UDTFs or procedures. So you have to be little aware, and you have to work on it, then only you'll have some clarity. So this particular thing, right, UDTF, you have to remember. So this is the function. There are three functions when you want to process your data as a tabular format for JavaScript based UDTF. One is process row, one is initialize, and then finalize. Initialize is the first one. You initialize the variables and all this stuff, and then process row for each row. How do you want that to be processed? How do you want to spit out the data? And then finalize at the end of the program. What do you want to deal? How do you want to deal with? Okay, let me show you one particular thing here. Okay. So create or replace hello world 0 function, and in the table you should name the name of the column. So whenever you're trying to write a table function, right, you have to tell what your column name should be. That's what it is. And data type JavaScript process row function, and this is row writer context. So each of them has row, means row gives you if you have any parameters, right, here param 1, param 2, param 3, then row dot param 1, row dot 2. This row thing will have all the parameters that you have passed to your function, and this row writer is the one which goes and writes, which spits out your data in a tabular format. And then context, so what context that you are writing to. So let me go ahead and then create this. Select. So I am trying to able to read the column. Select. Even if you say select star, it gives me the same thing. Hello world. Or I can write output column, because I know the column name, right? I can query the column name here. Hello. Okay. And then so the first name, last name. We know, right? Whenever you are writing, working with JavaScript, you should have the uppercase. Lowercase doesn't work. This is another example of it. So I'm trying to create a function. Okay. Hello, Heman. First name, last name, but whenever this is the row part. V is the column, and for the column, I'm just saying hello, and then second one, row. Row will have the parameters that are passed to this function. Row dot first name, row dot last name. But whenever you are trying to write it, you have to use the uppercase because it's a JavaScript. SQL based functions or UDTFs, you don't need to worry about the case sensitivity. But when it comes to JavaScript, case sensitivity is important. Right. Whatever you pass. If you go and put it small name, right? First name. Last name. Null values. It doesn't know what is the value of that particular thing. It just spits out null. Okay. Okay. This will give you the value. And then coming back to the other example, right? So I am having a table. So this use case is right. I just want to count how many letters are there in my employee name or whatever the text that you pass, the column name that you pass, it has to go and then read the count of that particular thing, and then it has to give me the total number of the total size of the entire column. For example, I have 41 rows in employee table and I have e-names. E-names range from 5 letter, 4 letter, 3 letter, and for each row, whenever I query, I should know the size of that particular e-name, and then at the end of the result set, I just want to get the total of the entire size. For example, I have 40 records, all of them are of 4 is the size of the column name, and the employee name column size is 4. So 40 into 4, 160. I should see 160 as the result. You're able to follow my use case, right? Yes or no? I'm trying to write a function here. So you are able to follow my use case, right? Maybe after I'm done, then probably easier to know. So character sum is, I'm trying to say sum of the characters that are part of any column, and the column name that I'm passing is string, and the return table of, I'm returning a table, number, float. Number is the name of the column, float is the data type, language, JavaScript. Okay. First thing is I'm trying to, because I want to calculate the total length of, so for example, if you go and see, right, select then 5. So it has given me 55554. And if I want to get the entire thing, the sum, right? How much is the sum? If I don't give a limit, right? Limit will be like 5554444, right? So, and then I want to calculate the total. Select sum of 209. So for each row, whenever I call this function, it has to give me the length of that particular e-name, and yet, and at the end of that thing, I want 209 to be seen total. Are you able to follow me? If you have to say yes or no. This is the use case that I'm trying to achieve. For that, what I'm trying to do is, right, I am using the function initialize. In the initialize, I am giving the variables cc count, c sum. Sum is for calculating the entire of the column. Count is just how many elements, basically. I'm not using that anymore. So process row, we have seen this function row writer, context. So row writer, I'm just trying to write number, and then whatever the row, the length, the column name that you have passed, dot length. So if you pass ename dot length. So that is the output that I am passing. But before passing it, right, what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to count the elements, how many elements are there, and then, so when you're calling it for the first time, first row, King is the name of the employee name. We have 4. It comes here. This is the first count. Count is 0, 0 plus 1. So the first row becomes 1, and then this csum dot row dot insert. So the name of the employee is King. KNG, then it spits out 4. When you look at this particular column, it will give out the value of 4. And then I have a finalize. What I'm trying to do this, right row. I'm writing one more row. Whenever the rows you call them, right, I keep on adding all this stuff, right? C sum is equal to C sum plus. So for example, first row is king 4, 0 plus 4, 4. The second row, if it is 5, 5 plus 4, 9. And then it keeps on adding, and I'm trying to write the value at the end. Okay, so let me go ahead and run this. Expected. I was trying to do some experiments on it. I don't know what to do. The function got created. So now I'm trying to run this function. Character sum. Name, comma. Unknown. I'm sorry, the table function, right? We are calling in a regular way, it doesn't understand. So how do you call them? Select name, comma, or you can say select star from EMP, comma, like when we use lateral pattern, right? The same character sum of ename. Table of. I forgot the syntax. This particular thing should be table of the table function, right? Table of characters. Okay. These are all the column names. So ename Blake 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You get the 5. And then Scott 5. So for each and every row, we are passing a row output right here. If you look at it, this particular first row it comes, it adds count is equal to 0, and then comes here row dot right, whatever the column name that we are passing, it reads and spits out that particular row right. Row dot insert dot length. So that is the reason we are getting this 5, 5, 5, 5. And then if you come down to the bottom right, see 209. At the end, what we are trying to do, we are telling calculate the total sum and give me 209. But it doesn't have any values here. So only we are spitting out one more value here. So the column names will be null. All the data in the columns will be null. And if you want to handle something like in the employee name, if you want to see some meaningful total or something like that, right? Then you can decode that. Sorry, NV null. So if you look at this data set, right? And it got its total count. Where is this? the other column, table of. How do we define this? What is the column name that we have used here? Num, right? See, we will do that. And then when you come down to 209 and the total count. So you have to somehow work out, and then on the SQL part try to handle that to have a meaningful something. If you have to calculate something and if you want to write like this, you can write. Okay. Yes, are you able to follow me? Shall I repeat this one more time? Whenever you are trying to create this particular table function, right? There are three parameters, three functions that are part of this code. One is initialize, the next one is process, and third one is the finalize. In the initialize part, we initialize the variables. In the process row, whatever you want to see for each and every row, you can write that process. But if you want to finalize, if you want to do some calculations, you want to have your logic somewhere, trying to add the sums of it, and then in the process row, you want to do some calculation, or you have to put your code. And then in the finalize function, if you say row writer dot write row, it writes another row which is not part of your table data set, but it's another row that is spitting out. And if you want to refer the parameters that are part to pass to this table function, you can refer the row dot. Okay, and this is how you can write this table function. Okay. And this we have. So this one is right. If you want to loop through for 10 times and try to print, right? That is what it is. Start from table of allowable activity. And then TC is the number of records that we are finding, the counter. If I said 10, right, it goes on spins loops 10 times. The skill compilation allowable table of allowable start from table of allowable 0 10. They don't understand number, so this is a big thing. So it's a string, right? 1 second. So I'm trying to convert this string into a float and try to loop through. I'll just take this out. It's not able to read that. So the problem here is, right, if you look at this particular code, I'm passing a string and I'm trying to convert that into a float inside that and then try to loop through. Because this 10 is a number, integer, right? Or a number. So it's not taking that float and then it's showing me an error. So float, first thing is write row, row.is 10, and then from 0 to 10, hello world 1, hello world, so hello world 0, hello world 1, hello world 2. It has to print until whatever numbers that you have given. So it's not trying to print that row.tc float. I'm just trying to convert here, it's not able to convert that. Let me see. Unexpected colon. Colon int. This should not be the case. FLOAT. It's not able to, so it recognizes it as number and then it's not able to convert it. If you have this kind of scenario, right? You pass this variable as a variable. Some problem with this is I have written a float 1 less than $tc right row, it should write the tc value and it's not writing it. I'll check on this why this is not printing as per the needed. So normally it should go row and then first it has to spit out the values that we have passed. If you have passed 5, it should spit out 5 and then from there hello world 0, hello world 1, hello until 5. It should write that. So it's not, I'm not able to figure out what is the problem with this. I'll troubleshoot and get back to you in the afternoon. Okay, these two things. So does it make sense? You guys, it's too complex, or how do you think this is? Unless until you have a scenario and then you start writing the code, then only you'll get to know the code. Okay. So let's catch up in the afternoon, and then we have the next topic, procedures. We'll go through the procedures. Okay.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.